Hey everybody, welcome to Black Spring. By now, the pandemic has sparked a flurry of convictions from Americans all over the country, from independents, Democrats, Republicans, the Green Party, and so forth. But even more offensive, one might ask, have we suspended the Bill of Rights for, or in exchange for, government-imposed safety and security? Namely, First, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and even the 10th Amendment. How are we to defend our institution and rights when they're treated as if they've been nullified? Well, in this segment, we'll take a closer look at what trends are spreading in states and maybe even in a state near you. As always, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Now, this was written by Selwyn Duke of our vetted source, the New American. Healthcare workers give cops corona positive patients addresses. Judge says the infected can be arrested. In this time of the pandemic, spreading faster than the disease are the restrictions and government trespasses designed to combat it. The latest examples are healthcare workers sharing pandemic positive patients' addresses with the police and a Michigan judge authorizing the arrest of people suspected of harboring the virus if law enforcement deems such action necessary. Now, this section entitled Dropping a Dime on the Disease. Now, here says, long considered an imperative in America, medical privacy is going out the window in certain places thanks to the pandemic hysteria. As LifeSite reports, healthcare workers in a handful of American states are sharing with the police the addresses of those who test positive for the pandemic. Now, paraphrasing here, the so-called information sharing, quote, information sharing, is currently underway in states like Massachusetts, Alabama, Florida, as well as in parts of North Carolina. ABC News reports. Now, this information sharing is being done in the name of, quote, keeping officers and EMTs safe, and works by states directing their local health boards to share addresses of those who have been tested positive for the virus. Also, a Florida State Emergency Operations Center recently announced that they are sharing the addresses of positive cases and positive case patients with first responders. However, as the ABC report notes, concerns have been raised by both health and privacy activists that health agencies sharing information with the police might cause some to forego testing, getting tested, or even being treated for the pandemic. So we go on here to a section entitled, Did You Just Blow Your Nose, Sir? In one Michigan county, whether or not they have many ways of making you talk, they may have ways of making you cough. Regardless, a judge in Kent County has authorized the arrest of those suspected of carrying the pandemic if the police deem it necessary, as LifeSite also reports in a different piece. Now, this section, first highlighted by radio host Steve Gruber, Kent County Chief Circuit Judge Mark Trusuk's April 6th order declares that any citizen deemed to be a carrier and health threat can be, quote, involuntarily detained by a peace officer, transported to and detained in an involuntary isolation facility selected by the health officer for observation, testing, and or treatment, end quote. The individual could then be held for at least 3 days to confirm he or she is, quote, without a fever of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 72 consecutive hours, without use of fever-reducing medication, or is otherwise non-symptomatic and meets the CDC criteria for release from isolation, end quote. According to the Great Lakes Justice Center Trusak based the order on state law that authorizes the confinement of individuals who a, quote, court has reasonable cause to believe, end quote, is a public health threat. But whereas the law requires a court to assess specific cases before making an arrest, Trusak gave police and health officials blanket permission to decide who may be a threat. Okay, so what's coming up here is a bit from the news station, Michigan Station 13, and we're here. It says, in fairness, Michigan Station 13 on your side says the story has another side as presented in the 2-minute video. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, and I'm happy to bring you that footage.
Coronavirus pandemic began, health officials have been urging people displaying symptoms to self-isolate. That is especially true for people with confirmed cases. But what if they refuse? Kent County has a plan in place should that happen. 13 on your side's John Hogan explains.
If a person has coronavirus and they refuse to isolate, well, a court order can compel them to do so.
This is a temporary thing to detain someone for the protection of the people of this county.
Judge Mark Trusak this month signed an order allowing a person who has coronavirus or who is displaying symptoms to be temporarily detained if they refuse to isolate voluntarily. The document was drafted by Kent County Corporate Counsel Linda Howell.
This order is a last resort, but we've never used it. I can't imagine that we will need it.
Other counties in Michigan and in other states have similar orders in place. It is not unique and is certainly not unprecedented.
And keep in mind that this order is based on the Public Health Code, which has been in place since 1978.
The order allows someone to be detained for 24 hours. If it needs to be extended, a petition has to be filed and there has to be a court hearing.
This order would allow us the time necessary to do the rest of the paperwork, to find them a spot to stay before they disappeared into our community.
Kent County Emergency Manager Lieutenant Lou Hunt says Guiding Light Mission is a resource for those who agree to isolation.
If they're positive, then they can stay there on their isolation side and they've got a place where they can rest and recover.
Howell says the petition and affidavit is being misconstrued as a draconian measure. That, she says, is simply not the case.
It is not intended to allow anybody to just miscellaneously be picked up, because most people have no inclination to spread any problems to their neighbors.
The court has to be...
I'd like to thank you for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
Notified within 24 hours if the order is used. In Grand Rapids, John Hogan, 13 on your side.
So yes, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, and we will continue. And it says here, according to this article and report, obviously a contagion is present. People are currently very scared, and it is understandable that certain mitigation measures would be taken. It also doesn't help that we have lunkheads such as the people in the short videos who threaten to purposely spread the pandemic. Now here I'll give you a sample of an offense committed by someone of a different persuasion.
An 18-year-old Texas woman is facing charges this morning after police say she threatened to spread COVID-19 intentionally. Lorraine Maradiaga reportedly said in a series of videos on Snapchat that she tested positive for the virus, and she went on to say that she would purposely spread the infection. Authorities charged her with making a terroristic threat, which is a felony. Maradiaga turned herself in and changed her story, telling authorities she does not have the coronavirus. A judge has ordered her to quarantine for 21 days after she is released from jail.
And yes, as we reach the final section of this segment, it turns out that one of the above individuals was perpetuating a hoax, and of course the other may have been as well. Now, as you can see, there's many different variables happening, and some are much more careless and maybe even more could be considered pretty cruel and not in good faith of what's happening for public safety. But yet there's something else. It doesn't help that many of our, quote, leaders and other public officials are often behaving irrationally and tyrannically. It certainly doesn't inspire confidence. For example, when Governor Philip Murphy of New Jersey, Democrat, says that he didn't even consider the Constitution when issuing his lockdown order and the Bill of Rights, which he took an oath to uphold, is, quote, above my pay grade. A Mississippi police officer, while raiding a drive-in church service, tells a pastor that his rights are suspended. Police in Raleigh, North Carolina, respond to a, quote, reopen the state protest by tweeting, quote, protesting is a non-essential activity, and then when called on it, defend themselves by saying they were just following orders. And with the queen of them all, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Democrat of Michigan, called, quote, the worst governor in America, end quote, prohibit elective procedures such as joint replacements, but allow prenatal infanticide, aka abortion, to continue, shut down churches, but keep liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries open, and ban the sale of food plant seeds, but continue selling lottery tickets, which bring the state's revenue. Governors apply the same virus-driven lockdown rules to relatively unaffected rural areas that they do big city hotspots because they are afraid of being called, quote, racist, end quote. Statist politicians use the virus scare to advance a hard-left agenda via trillion-dollar, quote, stimulus packages, with Majority Whip James Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina, telling his fellow travelers that such a bill is, quote, a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision, end quote. All rationale, people accept sober and reasonable mitigation measures, but such won't be instituted when judgments are colored by political ambition, power lust, prejudices, political correctness, panicked minds, and constitutional ignorance. If politicians want people to take their orders seriously, they have to reflect seriousness. We also need to seriously consider that if we're willing to kill our republic along with the virus, we're already sicker than any pathogen could make us. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring. Now, here's the tag. Now, with all that's going on in the culture of what appears to be tyranny and draconian measures and contradictions in measures in the sake of public health and power grabs, can our freedoms really be defibrillated? And can freedom be normalized without these risks in the future? And what does recourse look like for America if these measures are padded for political gain? I'd like to thank you for joining me on this segment of Black Spring. And please let me know, as always, in the comments what you think, and also let me know what your concerns are. If you will hit the bell for notifications, if you hit the like or the unlike, or even the share button, that helps with Black Spring with Autumn's platform and helps to mitigate suppression on YouTube. Thank you so much and have a great day.